my grandmothers, so both my grandmothers lost children, had to bury children before they ever died because they lived to old ladies, both of them.
Yeah,
And they always said the hardest thing that you will ever do in your life is bury your children. Both of them said there's nothing in life that could happen to you that is
that's
the worst thing that you can ever do, no matter how old they are, no matter, anything. My grandma on my mother's side had a stillborn long time ago. It was maybe her first baby, actually. I think it was her first was a boy. And even in, like back in the day, they had like the back of the Bibles with the family tree. She still would have his name on everything, even though he died, like he came out and was a stillborn. So she still grieved him. He had a grave site, like all these things, like, and her whole life, even as an old lady, like, and then, one of my uncles died, like, and they were older and stuff like that with children. And as painful it was, she just thinks of like all of her children, like, even though she missed out on a whole life of her first, it was like that was still a part of her, and it still went on with her other children. She went on and had a bunch of kids, and still it was like it was a part of it's a part of her. It's a part of her family, So it's something that I didn't understand growing up because, I wasn't a mom and I didn't understand all those things. But then as I came out, I was like, wow, my grandma lost her first too. It was a boy. And, and she had to do things in a different way because things were different back then. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like you had to like get back up and you had to just like keep going, and you didn't get to really talk about it. But she wrote like letters and
Right.
stuff like that. You know what I mean? She had like stuff that she did that in like secret of what she was doing to like celebrate her kid, and it's like, and it's sad thinking of like that was like the generation back then. You know
Yeah,
what I
because
mean?
now we at least have this community online who are like, here's all the memory making ideas you can do. And we want to see your kids. And, the doctors let us see our kids. We're allowed to love them. Sometimes we're lucky enough to have cuddle cots to prolong the period of time we can have with them. Sometimes they let you come home and I guess do like visitation there. We have options. My grandmother, I found out after she died, and she died like Carson did. She met Carson. She had a stillbirth, and I didn't know. And if it wasn't a stillbirth, the baby was born too early. She was like 6 to 7 months pregnant. But no one knew. Like people in my family didn't even know. Like I don't know if it was a boy or a girl. She never she never talked about it, not even after Carson died. And it just breaks my heart to think that like she didn't get to spend time with them or like really get to, have those memories or feel like she could talk about this baby who did matter. And she referred to it as a miscarriage, in fact. And so that's why I just assumed she had a miscarriage between, but then 6 to 7 months you delivered and you had to say goodbye, or maybe they were just taken. But it's just no one, I didn't know. I never knew. And I mean, she died when I was 30. So I just never knew.
Yeah. See, my mom knew about it because I kind of knew. I mean, I've seen his name and I seen stuff, and I was kind of like, I don't know, things were different back then, so I didn't understand. But my mom knew about it because my mom had a couple miscarriages, so my grandmother came in and shared her
Talk to
experience about her first, and it was this like you had the baby. They didn't give you your baby. Sometimes you didn't know if you had a boy or a girl, and you go on like a feeling. She knew she had a boy, and she seen baby with a full head of hair, and you know what I mean, like she seen when they literally came and took the baby away from her. Like baby came out and they just kind of took the baby. And her thing was for like my grandmother always had this fear of briefcases, and I never understood because my mom was in the military, so she always had a briefcase of papers, and my grandmother hated it. Like it was just such a big thing. Like she hated that briefcase. She didn't want it anywhere near her. And it was because they literally come in the room with a briefcase and put the baby in it, just shut the lid and take your baby. And so my grandmother spent her whole life fearing briefcases because that was her first child. That's what they did. And, and it was just this they buried him because it's a kind of like a Christian thing and, that kind of thing. And, and I think she got to give a name, I don't even think they have a middle name. I think it's just a first name and their last name. And it was just very like they handled everything. She didn't get to see anything. She didn't anything. She knew like I had a boy, he had a full head of hair. He didn't cry. Like that was basically what she, whatever. But it was so weird when my mom had told me that. I was like, it makes so much more sense of like growing up of things that triggered my grandmother from all these things. Like I didn't understand it growing up, but then as like all this stuff, it all made so much more sense. And it's like, it is such a weird thing to look at how different the time period is. Cause that's like, that was my grandmother. And then,
Right.
my mother had a different stuff. And now we're having different stuff of what they're offering to families and that kind of thing. But it's a
That's
surreal thing, I guess, and like, and I was like, oh my gosh. And we have people, lost families that they fight against trying to advocate, we need advocation. We need better for lost families. We need it across the board. This is everywhere. This is little towns. This is big cities. We need better in the hospitals. We need it with our staff, with the nurses, with the doctors. We need it like more education. We need more information. We need more support. And I found out recently, there's a hospital right here in town. I'm in a big city. We have a lot of hospitals, a lot of choices. There's a hospital right here in town. Lost mothers were sharing, even in the past few years since my son has died. So my son would be 8. So these are like newbies. Maybe they lost their kid a couple years ago, maybe a year ago. They're coming in with a duffel bag and taking the kids away. And when I heard that, it freaked me out because I just thought of my grandmother and I thought, why is that happening in 2000 and something? Like, this just shouldn't be happening. And that's what they remember. Like my kid was put in the little bed, like they would, like the little,
cuddle
bed that's
thing,
normal. Yeah. I didn't get a cuddle cot. They didn't offer me that, but mine, what they did was make it look normal. So they put him in the little, like, your bed that would be like your bedside sleeper thing. Yeah. And they wheeled him off and they took him off to do their thing. He was treated like a normal baby. Like, you know what I mean? There was nothing weird. They asked me like they asked me if I wanted his clothes and all this stuff. Now looking back, I wish I would have taken it. The nurses offered like all this stuff. I couldn't take it. I was like, but he'd be naked. There's my brain. Like, you know what I mean? Like you don't think about, they were like, they wanted to offer before they took him away to take him to the student. They were like, we can take and I was like, but my baby would be naked. And
I have to tell you, I had the same thought. We were leaving Carson. They had undressed her. So we donated her organs. They were going to go do surgery when she was. And I was like, no. So I left her. We're Eagles fans here in my house. So I left her. I said, she can't be naked. And so I took one of the onesies I had for her. It was an Eagles one. And I put her in the Eagles onesie. And so when she arrived at the place for her autopsy, I read she arrived in a gray Eagles onesie. And it was so important to me that she wasn't naked, just like you said. But then my baby would be naked. And she wasn't. And he wasn't. He wasn't naked.
And
he was warm.
Isn't that weird thing that I was like, and I like looking back, I was like, I think they were trying to be like, this was the only outfit that your baby was in. And they were trying to give me his clothes. I think that's what it was. And in my mind, like now looking back, exactly like what you did, I wish I would have had somebody be like, do you have an outfit that you want to put him in so you can have this outfit that he's been wearing with you guys for, the couple days that you've had him. So you get to take that home. You can put it in a bag. You get to smell him. Like, you get him, but nobody said anything. And so when they were like, do you want his clothes? I was like, you're going to strip my kid off naked. Like, it like really disturbed me. I was like, no, it's like my kid. And I thought the same thing. Like, it's weird because you're like, you got to keep your kid warm. And like, like there's those maternal instincts of stuff where I was like, but I can't have my kid go naked. So he didn't. He went in the clothes. And then later when I look back, I was like, the nurse was trying to be nice to me to be like, here's the clothes. But if she would have been like, do you have something else you want to send him in? Then I would have probably been like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I'll take it. Like, and said like, do you want his clothes we'll put him in a little bag so you have it, we'll dress him up so he's not naked. But instead she just was like, okay. And then like took off. And like looking back, I was like, that was one of the things that always like kind of bothered me, because I was like, man, I didn't know this. Nobody told me this. Because I really thought like my kid can't go naked. Like you can't send my baby naked. Like nobody does that with their baby. So it's interesting that you've had that same experience. You did exactly what I wish I would have done, but I didn't do it.
Well, don't say the nurse was the one who she just took all the clothes off and gave them to me. But I was like, I can't. I saw her, standing from the doorway where she was. And I was like, I can't leave her naked. They're like, they're just going to take her clothes off. And I was like, I don't care.
I don't care. Right?
I just can't leave her naked. And look, I just felt so good. Well, I felt real bad after reading the autopsy, but I just felt so good reading that she had clothes on. I was like, see, if I hadn't have done that, it would say she arrived naked. She didn't arrive naked. She was clothed.
Yeah. They did give me his socks and his little beanie. So I got those. I just didn't get his like little onesie and whatever. And I
know you always want it.
And I was like, it's that thing of like, you don't think about it, of like those things, those things that have anything. They gave me
your brain is broken. Like brain broken when your kid dies.
Oh yeah, no, it's true. So there's groups around town and they crochet like little booties and beanies and blankets and stuff that are obviously they're lost people they support for loss. So they put him in this like crocheted, I think it's white and blue blanket. And so like he's like in the receiving blanket and then he's in this giant blanket, whatever. And I did get that. They gave me the blanket that he was in or whatever. So like I got like very few things. I have like a little plastic tub because we cut part of his hair. He had long hair. Yeah. So we cut part of his hair and we have like his booties and the beanie and the blanket, like, and his like wristband kind of thing. Like that's it. Like we don't have anything. And they offered us, I think it was, oh my gosh, now it laid me down to sleep. They was going to come in to do photography, but my midwife told him no. So I didn't get any of those nice, beautiful pictures. And so like literally the pictures that I have is like, it's so few pictures of him. I don't have a full like picture of him from head to toe. Like I actually don't even know, like in my mind, I kind of remember, but I mean, I don't have an actual picture of him, of what he actually looks like from head to toe. There, you have to kind of almost piece the like puzzle together of like, here's a foot, here's a hand. And like, I don't actually have one. And so it's kind of like, it's one of those, like looking back, I'm like, there's so many things I wish like I could give a list to like hospitals everywhere and they just do it. Like, you know what I mean? I'm just like to provide certain things because, or at least offer it. And if people don't want it, like, we didn't get to do a bath. Like, I wish we would have done a bath. Those are like grieving things that I'm sure you probably heard in groups. There was things that people regretted. So we didn't get pictures. And that was one where I'm like, I learned from other mothers and from therapists, because they, therapists that deal with loss of children, the babies, that having the family, this is not just the mother, but the father too, change the diaper.
We did,
of your baby.
We did that.
Yeah. So like things like that, like change diaper, change their clothes, bathing your baby head to toe, combing their hair, the motions of like rocking and feeding and like all these things. Those are actually like really good, like grief things that they should, you know what I mean? That certain therapists know about and certain like lost people know about, but we're not offered. That's not always offered.
No. And I think it would be beneficial too, to have like almost like a peer come in. Like I told my, the chaplain that I worked with that, it would be beneficial to have like, if I'm in a place, and I don't know that I am now, but where I could go in and talk with these people and like, have a peer who can tell you how to make memories and explain why, you may want to do this. Because we don't know, and doctors don't know unless you live with it, or they can't understand the value of it.
Yeah. Something I was thinking, and this is just my opinion, is this should be the stuff that they teach those L&D nurses, like all the ones that want to work with the babies and work with pregnant people. This is what you're going to learn first. You are going to learn how to support a family who is going in, because there are a lot of families that also go in and know that they're going to be
Yeah.
or they're going to give birth and they're not going to bring home a baby. You need to
Ugh.
work with these people first. And to see that and to go through all those steps and really know how to support a family and to word things in a way like you were saying, Danielle, not, can I give you these clothes because they were your babies? Tell them why. Kind of be able
Yeah.
to be with them in those steps. And that's what they should be doing first. So we don't get all these people who are all woo and they're into all the, the things that really don't make a difference in the end. And
Yeah.
just,
Because at the end of the day,
yeah. And this is what
I
they should do first.
can't agree more. Like having a bereavement doula, almost
Yeah.
like one who is strictly there for those women who are going to give birth to a room that is silent, and how to help them find the will to do it. Because how do you do that?
Yep.
How do you do that? How do you find the will to give birth when you know you'll never heal?
And just
I
the
just,
piece for families like yours to be able to go through those steps with a family having done that before. There is one nurse that I knew of who was like the go-to nurse when there was going to be a situation like that at the local hospital. And I said, that is disgusting. You should have every one of your nurses trained the same way. Every one of them rotate through so they're all showing up for these families. So it's not just, oh, we'll call this nurse. She knows what to do. What if
what
she's
if
not
she,
on duty?
exactly. And what about her? What about her grief? Because seeing that much death and being the only one to deal with that death and that tragedy will impact her. What about her too? Like, it's so important. I can't agree enough about how they need bereavement training in that. And they just don't know what to do. I mean, my nurses were great. I was really lucky there. They knew what to do and they were good people, but just so many people aren't. And I mean, I spent more time with the NICU nurses than the postpartum nurses because where am I going to be in the NICU? And I mean, they were just so good. But we need more training on it. We need to talk about it. But I mean, to get the training, we have to admit that babies die. And nobody wants to talk about the fact that babies die. And so I think that comes back to like, we have to be uncomfortable to learn to do better because it is hard talking about babies dying. I mean, we've lived it and like, it's still hard to talk about. It's god awful. I don't even know how to handle it sometimes, because it's not something we're meant to know how to do. It's just so unnatural to, it's an unnatural death. It's out of order. It shouldn't happen.
I'm sure you've seen Christina came on or whatever. She's a NICU nurse. And
Yeah.
she's been a NICU nurse for a long time. And exactly what you just brought up, having one nurse take on I don't want to say burden, but really that's what it is.
It's a burden. Yeah.
She's taking the grief of all these families. And so it's like, what she told me was really interesting about NICU. She said that they almost have to rotate the NICU nurses around because not all the babies make it. Like, that's just the point. Like with NICU, like they're trained and they constantly keep training of different things that they deal with NICU, just like bereavement and stuff like that. But she has to like cycle in and out with other nurses because the grief that you are supporting a family, you're with them day in and day out, you're part of this baby's journey, and something happens and the baby doesn't make it. You've done all these things. You think it maybe it's going to get there, and then it doesn't. And now you're grieving this baby that you've been taking. This nurse has been feeding them, bathing them, taking care of them. This baby has become a part of them. You know what I mean? And so she was like, we have to cycle out and do different, they switch us up different levels and they switch us different places because the burden, like the grief that they have to take on personally at home, like, and they let them take like vacations and they have to like let them, get the help and the treatment that they need. And so exactly like you're saying, like all the nurses, like all the labor and delivery, the postpartum, like all of them should have some type of bereavement training. Like they should know how to handle the situation, because as much as it's shocking for a nurse, even if something comes in, it's an emergency, it's an emergency, it doesn't look good, but you're still trying the best that you can, and somebody doesn't make it. if you're not trained to deal with the family that has to actually deal with this, like, you're really kind of setting it up for disaster. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's something that like we should have already been doing like years ago. We already know like this is a thing, like, and
Yeah.
I
What
don't
have we
know
been doing, you know?
exactly like what have we been changing? What's been improving in this? And we don't have it. And it's like, yeah, there is bereavement doulas. They do exist. And I looked into being a bereavement doula, but first off, I didn't want doula attached to me. So
I
that was
love
a
it.
big turn off. I'm not gonna lie to you. I was like, can I be called bereavement something else? Like, can you
Bereavement peer.
like, I was like, can you like make up a name for me? And they were like, well, it doesn't really work like that. And I was like, okay, but can we like just get rid of that? But anyways, besides that point, what I was told, because there were some certain hospitals around here that they were kind of like in need of like a family, you get called and you would go. The problem is there's so few of us that would have been doing this that they could be calling me every single week. And I was like, at this point in my grief and stuff, I was like probably about as far along as you were. Okay. Like where you are right now. And I was like, it's only been a few years. I don't think I can handle that. Maybe I can do like one a month or something. Like, I think I have to like have like a balance. And they kind of were like, it doesn't really work like that. And I was like, well,
It
this
has
doesn't
to.
work for me because I can't do that. I was like, you can't call me every weekend or call me every few days because first off, I take the grief on of the families every time. And this is something that I'm sure anybody that's lost a baby, like when we hear someone else's story, you take their pain, like you understand their pain so deeply. Like we're so bonded, even something else, like you feel it. So going in person to the hospital to share these things and to even just bring information, even if I was just bringing like paperwork or something to be like, look, here's your checklist of 10 ideas that I would like to suggest to you. I was like, this is too much for me.
Yeah, because it's ripping off your own Band-Aid every time you do that. And once a month, I get it. That's about what I think I could do at this point in my life too, about 3 years out. Because you don't want to make it about you. And going every day is going to make your grief act in such a way that it's going to be really hard to be there for the person and not yourself almost. Like it's that, and I guess they don't understand that. Like having never been through it, you maybe you can sympathize, but you just don't know, like it hurts being there for another person because you have to go into the place where you feel that pain. And it's just, there needs to be more of us, just kind of like NICU, but so we can cycle. But I have a fear there never will be.
Yeah.
Because
you're right, because they're not, they focus on some areas, which I do know we need areas of medical care, obviously, of improvement. What happened to you should have never happened. That was a few years ago. It shouldn't have happened. So there is levels of improvement already that is preventable for death. Now we've got something bad happens and they don't have any idea how to deal with the families. They don't have any idea what to do. So it's like, we need like major improvements within our system, within our hospitals, because it's like, just kind of be like, oh, a baby died doesn't, and yes, they go through peer review and yes, they have to go through all this stuff. And it's great that they're doing that. But at the same time, what happens after? What are you doing after to support these families? Did you get them like, the proper therapy thing? Sending them a social worker or saying, get a therapist. That could be anyone. That literally could be anyone.
For people.
Yeah.
Because what you have to worry about, do they take your insurance? If they're taking new patients, can I get an appointment? Is the appointment like when I can actually make this happen? Because the sad thing is a lot of people don't have the luxury of just being able to just grieve. They have to go back to work if they're not going to have that baby with them anymore because they can't afford to survive. And plus they're going to still have medical bills, even if their child passed.
Yeah, we got the bill for Carson's. Yep. It's just, there's so much.